All right, we are live, and on today's episode, I interview Jorge and Gracie's first student in the USA, now a 6th degree Gracie Jiu-Jitsu black belt, and the man widely considered to be the first American student of Gracie Jiu-Jitsu. He's been training and teaching Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu for 40 years and has been part of the Krav Maga worldwide team for over 20 years. His memoir book, Worth Defending, How Gracie Jiu-Jitsu Saved My Life, co-written with Scott Burr, is available now on both Amazon and Audible. Welcome to the Winner's Circle, Richard Bresler.
Thank you very much for having me.
Absolutely, it's a real honor. As a jiu-jitsu practitioner myself, 15 years now, a black belt, and also a Muay Thai specialist and MMA fighter. It's great to talk to someone with such a deep lineage in this sport.
In this art.
In this art, true. That's touche. That's why you are the six stripe and me the one. So as I was talking to you at the beginning of this podcast, before we hit record, the goal of these conversations is really to uplift, inspire, and empower everyone listening along to move forward with greater faith, belief, and trust in themselves on their hero's journey ahead. And this first question sets up us on a positive note, and that is this: what do you love about your world right now, Richard? Not what you love about the outside world, what's happening in the external chatter, but what do you love most about your world right now?
That I'm getting a chance in life to do what I love to do.
And what is it that you love?
I love teaching. I love spreading jiu-jitsu. I feel that the instruction that I first received was I was extremely blessed to have the kind of instruction that I did, and at the time when I needed it the most, when I thought, like, I mean, I really was, I don't want to say, I felt hopeless at times just because I didn't have a direction. I didn't think that I would ever be able to do what I love to do. I mean, here I was into my, well into my 20s with real, like I said, no direction in the fast food business with my family, hating what I was doing and doing drugs. So now I love doing what I'm doing. I look forward to teaching and sharing, and now with this book written, just helping people to know where this art in the USA started and how much it's changed. And my mission is kind of to keep it as it was given to me instead of what it's becoming.
So let's differentiate the difference. So what was given to you and what is jiu-jitsu becoming that you're trying to steer it away from?
Well, jiu-jitsu, when I first learned it, it was, Horian told me, he said, you know, this is a martial art. It's a self-defense. It's the most effective self-defense that there is. That's the way it was, you know, so that's basically what even though I don't do probably as much stand-up self-defense in my classes, I still teach it with an awareness that certain positions you can be punched. And and also to get out of the mindset that there are points and in different positions that you're vulnerable in. And one of those positions is, you know, for those people who don't know, in the guard. If someone's in my guard and if they lift me up and I keep my legs crossed, I can be slammed.
Yep.
Where in modern sport today, there's no slamming. So that's the differentiation between that. And like Horian told me, he says, guys don't walk into the school and they go like, you know, I want to be a world champion, or, you know, when they walk into the school, at least back then, it was, I want to learn how to defend myself. Now, I don't know. I think it's like a thing. Jiu-jitsu, it's fun. It's a sport.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and it's a little geared off that. And I don't think there's any stopping what's happened because of the popularity, even though it got popular based on the effectiveness in the UFC.
Yeah.
But
so what are the principles on staying safe, like not taking guard? Like I teach kids, and what I try to teach them is to be able to stand up and escape the situation wherever they are. And guard, like you said, is not the place. If you're in guard on the street, you get kicked in the head, people come up behind you. I've spent a lot of time on sweeps and taking back takes, and getting out of danger on the ground and on the feet, learning how to wrestle and disengage. What is it most important for you in terms of self-defense jiu-jitsu?
well, you said something interesting, is that, if you have your back on the ground and let's say you're dealing with one person, someone can kick you in the head. You're talking about multiple attackers. I mean, you can be standing fighting somebody, stand up, and someone can come over here and hit you in the head also.
Yeah.
So let's just keep it one-on-one for now.
One-on-one. Okay.
Before we, so, and the thing is, it's not so much if you find yourself, it's there. If you do find yourself there, you can defend yourself from the onslaught of punches. And when you're not trained like that, and if someone's in your guard and they're throwing punches, you have to get out of the mentality, oh, I'm going to attack him, I'm going to go for something while they're punching me. It's not realistic. You have to defend. I was just at the Gracie University, actually, but even after that, I was talking to Hiran Gracie a couple days ago.
Yeah.
We were talking about he was sparring with a couple guys, and I'm not going to mention names, but one of the guy is an ex-UFC fighter, and he's a black belt in jiu-jitsu. And he was saying that these guys, when they first come in to train, when they're rolling, a lot of them are very aggressive.
Yeah.
And they can get done what they need to get done in 5 minutes if that was their mindset. But Hiran was saying that their defense isn't that good, and that's their mindset. So he said, if the fight goes longer than 5 minutes, if you can defend yourself, they wear themselves out, and then that's where you attack.
Yeah.
So
prey.
That's right. So and one of the things that Henner has said, and that I've repeated in class, if you're dealing with somebody in a street situation, he calls it, I think it's kind of like the 90-second rule. You have to hang on and defend yourself for 90 seconds till that person finally calms down. So if you can relax and defend yourself, there's a good chance, one, you won't get hurt, and two, you'll come away unscathed and possibly even catch the guy too. So it's survival mentality instead of attack mentality.
Because, I like that.
Let's face it, I'm in my 70s. So what are the chances that I'm gonna, go with somebody younger and be fast enough? And I'm 140 pounds. I'm 5'10". I'm a thin guy. But the only real chance that I have is to really defend.
Weather the storm.
As long as I know how to deal with that, it raises my odds of being able to walk away. And so it's survival and defense, which jiu-jitsu now, I mean, look, in competition, you got to get it done, man. You got 5 minutes, 6 minutes.
Very
So
interesting.
it changes, especially as you get older.
Definitely. So let's trace it back to your roots. You were Jorge and Gracie's first student. You were working your family business, hating it, and you've discovered jujitsu. Let's enlighten our listeners on how that came to be. Let's kind of get to your origin story and when you were in your 20s on how you found jujitsu.
I was going through my miserable life, flipping hamburgers, managing a store, being, I started working for my dad, and then I thought the problem was my dad. So with me and a partner, we went into business with my dad, but it wasn't at the same store. So I thought, if I'm away from my dad, we'll be making money, doing the same thing, I'll be happy. Well, the problem wasn't my dad. The problem was the way that I looked at my dad and what I did with what he said. In other words, the easiest thing would be two people go up to a roller coaster. One, they get on the roller coaster, they get off the roller coaster. One's scared out of their mind, the other one's excited. So it's what you do, how you internalize that roller coaster, how I internalized what my father was saying to me. So I wasn't happy. And I thought that was the problem. So I went over and did my own thing and realized, here I am. So going to work, getting high, I bought a waterbed, and then I ended up a couple weeks later buying a set that came with the mattress. So I had 2 waterbed mattresses. I wanted to get credit on one of them. And the guy said, no, we can't do that. You're just going to you'll have a second mattress, sell it.
Yep.
So what I did, I put it in the recycler back then and sold it. And I put an ad, and Horian's roommate left a message on my phone. I called him back. Horian answered the phone, and he told me his roommate already bought a mattress, and I was about to hang up, and Horian said, but I'm looking for one. So I told him where I lived. I lived, 20 minutes away. I lived in the marina. He lived in Redondo Beach. He came over. We met. I gave him a kick-ass deal on the mattress and 3 sets of sheets. And then as he's leaving the house, he asked me if I've done martial arts. And that's when I told him I boxed a little bit. And, I asked him why, and he told me about his family. They were a family of champions in Brazil. They were very well known. And I thought, yeah, sure. But he asked me for a free class, and I said, if I was interested, and I went, heck yeah, I'll come down and take a free private class. I mean, what am I going to do? I'm just going to sit there and, and punch around, But so anyways, I went over there, and here we are 42 years later, and I'm still excited about jiu-jitsu the same way I was after the first class there.
That's beautiful. So what did he teach you in that first class that hooked you? Well, how did you get hooked from day one?
It wasn't so much what he taught me, although, a couple stand-up techniques, like where they grab your neck, like where they grab your jacket and, you come underneath, you do a little arm lock. But it was mostly when we went to the ground, he said, lay down. And then he mounted on top of me and said, okay, escape. He said, I want you to really try. Get out of here, Richard. And then when I couldn't escape and he stayed mounted so easily, I went, I'm in trouble. I mean, I could be in trouble, man. If this, I was paranoid. I was doing drugs. I wasn't in a good place. But, I just realized that I was easy prey if he didn't have good intentions. And then I mounted on top, and he told me to hold him down, and he escaped like that. I went like, okay, this was too easy, and I got to learn this stuff. I mean, this could really be helpful. And I realized I was very aware that I had fears. And I think that's part of the problem. I just listened to something, and so many people aren't aware that they do have fear. different kinds of fear. So I was aware of mine, and I went like, okay, this could help. And I came back. I want another lesson. So I was hooked.
You're hooked. Let's talk about fear. That's something I like to talk about with every guest. Fear in many aspects. Let's talk about the if there was fear when you decided to start your own restaurant away from your dad. Like, was that easy to do? Like, it's not easy to start your own business. Did you feel any resistance on starting your own business with your friend, your partner there, your friend? How was that? How did fear?
Well, that wasn't so much afraid of doing that, because my dad, there was four of us. There was four partners. My dad had another business partner who was in another location. So, and then it was me and then another friend of mine. So my dad, me, his business partner, and this other friend of mine that worked in my dad's business.
Yeah.
So we started that. So that really wasn't something that I really ever thought about being afraid of.
And it didn't sound like fear wasn't really an issue there, and it didn't seem like fear was an issue either when Horian invited you for that first private either. You said that was a very easy decision. Yeah, why not take a free class?
Well, no, wait a second. I said okay, but when I walked into the garage and I saw a fake gun, a real knife, and a club on the wall, my radar went up going, man, this guy, because he had it draped off. In other words, if you have a 2-car garage and you have a 10 by 10 mat and you have tools or anything hanging up on the garage, you want to cover up the background. You don't want to make it a mess. You want to make it presentable. But I saw behind the drape of what he had, and I'm going like, God, who knows? Maybe he would kill me and stomp me back there. I mean, I was afraid, but there was also, that was just the paranoia. But he had such a way to disarm you. He was very charming, still is, and very confident and very relaxed. When I met him, when he shook my hand in the house, I mean, it was just, it's very, very calm. So, I went through it. Obviously it wasn't up, but the paranoia was there.
And what have you learned about facing your fear from that experience?
Well, I didn't so much learn it there.
Yeah.
But if you love doing something, you just have to find a way to do it. I mean, you just gotta, whatever it is that you do, you just have to deal with things that come up, and which is not always easy.
What was the latest fear that you faced and overcome? I don't really know.
I don't have any fear. I'm not afraid of anything. No.
Yeah, you stepped into fear so many times. And I think that is the more
everybody's dealing with fear of some kind. Everybody. I mean, just of saying something to somebody. Well, I don't want to say that because I'm afraid I might hurt their feelings. I mean, it happens at so many different levels. And the one guy that I heard, I forgot the name of he wrote a book and I forgot his name, but he said, we're all, whether we drive someplace and we're afraid of being late or going on a walk. I mean, here I live in Santa Monica and things got crazy for a while. Sometimes, I mean, I was afraid to go out for a walk, but I wasn't going to stop. I prepared myself though, because I did get accosted. So just going on a walk. So now when I go on a walk, I carry a little pepper spray in my pocket because I don't want to have to deal with somebody in the street. I don't want to have to take somebody down, or I don't know if they're going to have a weapon.
Yeah.
So I'll keep my distance. But I mean, we're talking about either big fears or just the little everyday things. So fear is it's how we interpret our world. Like I said about the roller coaster. You know, what's the meaning of the roller coaster? Is it scary or is it exciting? It depends who you talk to about it and their interpretation.
Could be both.
Yeah, it can be both. You know, one of the things that Horian told me, because I remember when I got my, you know, I was bullied as a kid. So when I got my purple belt is a belt for people who don't know jiu-jitsu. I call it the arrival belt. When you get a purple belt, you've kind of arrived. You understand jiu-jitsu. You know, you can defend a lot of situations. But I remember after I got my purple belt, I was always either having a class with Horian or, you know, for a while with Hickson. And I would ask, you know, I remember I went to the for a while before, you know, it became well known. Horian was selling, before the UFC, there were in-action videos. Did you ever see those?
I didn't see them, but I've heard of them.
Right. Well, you can probably find them on YouTube. But I was selling, you know, we were selling VHS format videos for $29 or whatever. So my job was to, you know, put them in an envelope and take them to the post office and mail them out. So I remember one time going into the post office or UPS, wherever it was, and I made eye contact with somebody, with a woman, and she was with her boyfriend, and he saw that we made eye contact, and he looks at me and he's like, you know, like, what are you looking at? You know, and I'm like, I was looking at her, you know, and I said, you know, and I said, relax, man, she's with you, okay? But I felt myself, like my knees, you know, like my legs were shaking a little bit. And I went back and I told Horian, I said, you know, I don't think I deserve this purple belt. He says, why? I says, because, man, I was afraid. You know, and he said, Richard, it's not that you're not going to be afraid. You know, we're not going to turn you into a robot. You know, it's that it doesn't paralyze you. You know, so it helped me to understand, although part of me didn't believe him, because I thought, well, gosh, what's he going to do? Give me a blue? How am I going to feel if he takes away my purple belt and I wear a blue belt again? But, you know, but basically it was it. You know, every time he ever fought, Hickson told me the same thing. You know, when you get into the ring, it's a healthy respect, the same respect that you would get if you walked up to a cliff that was a couple 100 feet down and you walk over there. You know, you might be a little afraid of getting too close because you could take a tumble. So it doesn't stop me like 15 feet away. I'm going to go like, well, no, it's close enough. I mean, I could get up a little bit to it, but you know, the closer you get, the more afraid you would become naturally.
And what do we do with that natural fear? What did Horian teach you to do with that natural fear?
I think it's not so much that what he did is just that recognize it. Like I met a psychologist that was an NLP programmer, neuro-linguistic programmer. And he just said, just recognize it. Just see it for what it is. Don't judge it. And kind of like, or if you sit and go like, if you saw the fear up on a television screen and you went like, and you could just sit and go, wow, that's interesting. Don't judge it. Sit there and go, oh my God, I'm afraid. but see it for what it is. Like, oh, interesting. That's what fear looks like.
Observe it.
And yeah, observe it, and but the problem that we have is we judge it. Oh my God, I'm afraid. Oh no, and it, look, it's easier said than done, because what happens to our head when we start to judge stuff like that? In other words, oh my God, I'm afraid. Oh, geez, you don't deserve this. Oh my God. The internal dialogue that happens when we fail at something, even if it's fear, whatever it is, instead of just looking at it and going, oh, that's interesting. And that's the one thing Dr. Dossi taught me to do, is just to look at my thoughts. And you can have thoughts of fear. Doesn't mean you're afraid, just means you're having thoughts of fear. You could have thoughts of depression, but doesn't mean you're depressed.
Yeah.
And he just, that's interesting. So he says, how do you know the difference between being depressed and then thinking depressing thoughts? How do you know the difference? That's a question.
To me.
How do you know the difference? Yeah.
I think it's if you associate, if you think those thoughts are you, if you think those depression thoughts are you, then you're depressed. Versus if you just observe
if you identify with it. Yeah.
If you identify it with, yeah.
So if you say I am afraid.
No, I'm experiencing fearful thoughts.
That's right. Obviously, if someone's holding you up with a gun, you're not going to sit there going, I'm having thoughts of fear right now.
Yeah.
A rational kind of thing, but we're talking about just the basic everyday things. So, and it's what you do up here. It's probably, I was asked about if I had a second book in me. Yeah. And it wouldn't be about jiu-jitsu. It would be about this very same thing. How do you get the change that you're so desiring if you start to say, let's say, we have kind of epidemic in this country of overweight people. And so when they want to change, one of the things they want to do is maybe they want to exercise, they may want to change their diet, make some lifestyle changes. So when you start to do this and you say, okay, what are the healthy foods that create a healthy body? And you look at that, and you don't look at the other side. You don't have to sit there and go like, what's not good? We all know what's not good. Fried stuff,
sugar,
processed foods, sugar, chocolate cake, whatever. Not that you can't have a little chocolate cake now and then. I don't personally, but if you set a goal and say, okay, these are the foods, this is from now on, and all of a sudden you're like 3 days into it and you go, yeah, I'm doing really good. And then all of a sudden there's that little chocolate. Come on, just a little tease, come on. And you eat it and you go, oh my God, I knew I shouldn't have done that. I feel like crap now. You're an idiot. I can't believe, it's what happens there. And people kind of go into this thing where when I went through the same thing. And one of the things that Dr. Dossi had me do was to recognize it and just say, hey, it's okay. Just look at it for what it is. And every single time that little voice comes up, it's okay. It's okay. And by the way, speaking of this, Rickson Gracie's ex-wife, Kim Gracie, the mother of Kron and Hoxton and the two girls, she used to do a therapy called rebirthing.
Okay.
And it was a breathing technique. And I was really good friends with Kim. And she came over to my place. This is probably in the late 80s, and came over to my apartment. And she gave me a couple sessions. And it was a dozen sessions. It was breathing, focused breathing for an hour, or focus breathing for 30 to 40 minutes, and then you would lay there and, and this is one of the ways you get out of that, because it relaxes you. It helps you relax to get into a different state.
Yeah.
But one of the things that she said to me, she said, Richard, you need forgiveness in your life. I don't know what it is how she saw it, and then she said, when Jesus was asked about forgiveness, he said, forgive 70 times 7. So she said, take someone in your life and said, I, Richard, forgive, and insert that person, write it down 70 times a day. So I took 4 people. One of them was my dad. I don't even know who the other 4 or the other 3 were, but for a week, 70 times a day, I wrote, I, Richard, forgive, I, Richard, forgive, I, Richard, forgive. So at the end of a week, that's 490 times. The end of a month, just shy of 2,000 times, I wrote down, I, Richard, forgive. So that when I did screw up, all of a sudden, I didn't not only recognized myself for like, oh my God, I can't believe you did that. It's like, all of a sudden there was this voice that came going, hey, it's okay, Richard, I forgive you. And I was like, wow, that's interesting. And then that little voice would come back on the other side and go, no, you're an idiot. I can't believe you did that. And then I'd go, no, I forgive you. So it was like having you ever seen the cartoons when you have the bad guy and the angel, whatever, the devil, the angel, whatever it was.
Yeah.
I had an internal battle going on, but I made sure that I always, every single time that negative zone, oh, you're an idiot, would say, it's okay, I forgive you. And then I would say, I love you. So it helped me to get those changes and go easy on myself, because look, in my book, I think I say something to the effect, where I said, don't should on somebody. And there's probably someone else who had said, don't should on me or anyone else. So when you say, if you were to, like a student of mine, and I say, oh, you shouldn't have done that, doesn't make you feel very good. Or if you're my kid and you shouldn't have done that. Look what the hell happened now, But it doesn't change when we do it to ourselves. I shouldn't have eaten that. You don't feel good. So just say, look, what I did, it's done.
Yeah, exactly.
I forgive you. I love you. Move on. And that's something that has to be taught and repeated over and over to deal with that kind of stuff. Sorry, I went on a tangent, but it's something that
I love this. I love this. Thoughts become things, and we have the choice. Choice, as Viktor Frankl says, the most powerful of our human freedoms. And we have the choice to experience heaven or hell in this very moment at all times. And it's what we do with those thoughts, if we identify them or we let them go. And that's a power.
Do you know the name Earl Nightingale?
Yeah.
Okay. One of the things, he had an audio, because I listened to these things back.
The Stranger's Secret?
I think it was when he would say, you become what you think about all day long.
Yeah.
And that's it. Stranger's Secret. Yeah. So, I listened to Earl Nightingale, Brian Tracy, Jim Rohn, Zig Ziglar, different things, Tony Robbins. And it just, I had to keep that kind of stuff and Dr. Dossi would say, what you think about, you begin to feel, and what you feel, you begin to think about more. So when you're putting something in here, think about what it is, because you're going to start to feel it. And so interesting.
I think the feeling's a big piece, and that's what I was thinking when you write, I forgive myself. I believe it's not only do you write that, but you also feel that forgiveness. I think that's an important piece of the equation. is feeling the sensation of forgiveness so that you embody it.
Yeah. Yeah. When you repeat it, it kind of permeates. I mean, like, and one of the things that would happen is that, and where I would really notice it when I'm driving down the street, someone cuts me off and and then I went, oh, Richard, come on, man. And I'm like, and when I would do this, and this is right after I did that, and even still, if it happens to this day, sometimes those automatic thing, I didn't sleep right, whatever, but I'll always sit there and go, it's okay, I forgive you. I mean, I don't walk around with a thing, or if I get in an argument with somebody, I don't walk around with that kind of negativity. I don't harbor resentment, because what's done is done. It's not going to serve me to walk around with that kind of negativity. Doesn't mean that I can't be angry at somebody, but it's not going to where I'm constantly seething over something.
Because that dominates your reality. Like, if you're angry at someone, the person you're harming is yourself. They're not feeling that. They could be living their merry old life, but you're just seething and hurting yourself.
Right.
So this conversation about the mindset, about thoughts becoming things, we're fear. So when we feel fear, just identifying it as a thought, rather than identifying as you being that thought, and it really changes things. So that's one way of encountering fear. Another way is something you alluded to with Hicks, and something that I learned through Hickson, is the power of breath. When we encounter fear, breath can really transform that experience. What have you learned about breath on your journey in jiu-jitsu and beyond?
Well, you spoke with Marty, right?
Yeah.
Well, he has, I think,
breathing for jiu-jitsu.
Was it that, or BJJ? Was it? Yeah.
Breathing for BJJ. Yeah.
Yeah. And then my boss, where I teach right now, he's married to Crystal, and she also learned the same thing from Dr. Belize, and I think she calls it breathing for athletes. Same breathing thing. So, and then even before I met them, there was a 3-part breath work just coming in. I mean, I've been through all different kinds of breath work. I did the 3-part breathing. I still do it. Did it this morning, as a matter of fact. And I'll do the breath work a little bit. I mean, here and there, I don't really do as much as that. I have to be careful how I word this, as that I want to do. Like there's certain things that you have to be motivated. But a lot of times, I mean, I first got introduced to breath and how it can change me back in the early 80s, because I was doing Quaaludes, cocaine, and pot every day. And the pot lasted for a while. The cocaine and Quaaludes were about 2 or 3 years when I really became a problem. And when I wanted to change, and this is after I met Horian, I wanted to change this, and I was seeing a therapist before Dr. Dasi, and I also started taking Valium because I had an anxiety. Well, Valium, one of the side effects of Valium is anxiety. So, just like all drugs, they cause the same thing that you're taking the drug for. Many people don't realize that, but all you got to do is look at the side effects. So when I was seeing this therapist and going, okay, I wanted to stop doing drugs. So, and I said, man, I have such a hard time with anxiety. I mean, sometimes I feel like I'm really coming unglued. Sometimes when I'd have these anxiety attacks, I'd have to go look in a mirror to make sure it's still me. I felt like I was coming unhinged.
Mm-hmm.
So what he did is he had me do a 10-10-10 breath, which I turned into 20-20-20, long, slow inhale, sitting up straight, long, slow inhale into the diaphragm, hold for 10 or 20, and then out and really, get it all out and do this. And a lot of times when I'd be driving, I'd be anxious, and sitting in my apartment or driving, I noticed after about 5 minutes, I'd start to get a little more anxious. It would happen for about a minute. And then all of a sudden it was like magic. I just was like, whoa, that was so nice. 10 minutes later, I was like, wow, this is really relaxing. So, and it was by need. I needed to do this, but I still do it to this day. When I'm driving, might feel a little anxious, and I'll just breathe for, usually before class, I'll go in and I'll breathe, just because I.
And in
10 in.
hold, 10 out.
Yeah. What I do is I like to make the exhale a little longer.
Yeah.
Because when you push the exhale out and you use your diaphragm to push it out, what's the one thing you do? It forces you to take another breath.
Yeah.
So I make sure that I get any trapped stuff out, because it's the trapped stuff that you want to get rid of anyhow. So use your muscles to exhale it, and then it helps you to take a fuller inhale. Mm-hmm. So just doing that alone, and that's, to me, that's like the bare minimum that someone really could do to really help them notice change to relax. And do that for 5 minutes. Sit up straight when you do it, and just be aware of your thoughts. Don't judge your thoughts. Just focus on your breath, because you want to find out how wild your brain or your mind is. Just sit still for 1 minute or 30 seconds and just put one word and just say, I can only repeat one word. Mm-hmm. It's almost impossible. Mm-hmm. I mean, I've had after a breathing session with Kim, there was one time that, and we did this a dozen times. There was one time that when we were done, that I had an experience that wasn't even aware of my body. I was just like, oh my God, this is incredible. It was, I didn't want it to end, because I felt like I was one with the universe. Mm-hmm. And then I got this message saying that, don't keep the love trapped inside. That's what you're already doing. Let it out. And when I became aware of that, I just sat there and I wept for about 15 minutes. It was such a profound experience. So I would think, whatever kind of breathing a person needs to get into, find whatever you're drawn to and do it. Because it really is. I have a former student who teaches the 3-part breath, and he's very successful at it now. And one of the things that he always says, he said, I stopped going to therapy because all I did was breathe, and realized I was dealing with the stuff through my breath, because it was slowing me down enough to help me to come to the realization that all I needed is just to relax. Because the rest of it's a lot of just, we can say, oh, my dad did this to me, my mom did this to me, whatever it was, but it doesn't matter.
Their stories.
That's right. It's their stories. So just relax, forgive, and ask yourself, what do you want?
Heaven now. Choose it in this moment.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, that's beautiful. So for your jiu-jitsu students, how do you recommend they breathe on the mat? Hickson is a big breath for jiu-jitsu guy. What do you teach your students to breathe on the mat? Like, what is your recommendations for jiu-jitsu practitioners in terms of breath on the mat while rolling?
You know what? I haven't focused on it too much. One of the things that I will tell them when they are breathing is the one thing I remember Horian always telling me, shut your mouth, breathe through your nose. Because when you breathe through your mouth, it puts you in a sympathetic state. Mm-hmm. And you want to be in a parasympathetic state. And so when we, and the more you breathe through your mouth, the more tired you get, the worse it gets for you. You sit there and you get, you know, and you get exhausted. And so many people, and they're doing this because they're so tense. So it's kind of like a vicious cycle. So if you learn to breathe before you came into class, and then, I mean, the one word that I repeat in my classes more than any word is the word relax. You ask any of my students, what's the one word you'll hear me say? And they'll go, relax. You know, it's kind of like, okay, Richard, but it's, and then, you know, Crystal will teach a, you know, breath workshop every few months, and I'll encourage the students to come in, and, you know, and for the same reason that I would recommend Marty's
breathing for BJJ program.
Yeah. And right now, I mean, I think it has a 50% off sale too at the time of this recording. I don't know it'll be when this comes out, but I'm sure if you contact Marty and you tell him Richard Bresler said, I'm sure he'll hook you up.
Yeah.
But just to do something, just to learn how to diaphragmatic breathe and just to keep your mouth shut. I mean, those are two big things because, you know, and I tell guys, if you are sucking wind and you cannot close your mouth when you're rolling, so you're in trouble. I said, so, you know, it's one thing, you know, so you want to train yourself to do this. You want to just, you know, I always remember Horian always had his mouth closed. And when he was telling me, he never really gave me specific things, and neither did Hickson. They would just, I noticed, and Horian, I just remember going, Richard, mouth closed. You know, that kind of, and it's something that when I see guys, when I hear in the room, I go, guys, close your mouth. I don't want to hear this. Yeah. And I said, if you're too tired, I said, stop, slow it down. You know,
relax, you know,
the breath. Sometimes I get a little, yeah.
Relax the breath, but also relax the body and the mind. I think it's the three pieces to that relaxation.
Yes.
Stop trying so hard.
Easier said than done.
Yeah. I'm very curious. You were saying when one of those rebirthing experiences with Kim Gracie, you received a message about love. What have you learned about love in your 70 years? What does love mean to you, Richard?
Oh, man. That's a good question. You know, I don't know how to answer that. I really don't know how to answer it.
Maybe you do it with your being. I feel that's one way. One way we answer questions is we exemplify it with our being. It's maybe at least that's how I answer the question. It's such a big topic, but what love means to me, I exemplified in my being with kindness, compassion, joy. So I don't know.
Well, I do my best to do that. You know, I'm not always successful at it. You know, one of the things that I have discovered, I kind of knew, but it really hit home about me, is that I like to make my class fun. It's one of the first things I like to make it fun. So because Dr. Dossi and Horian always made the class fun for me, just because, I don't make it that serious. I mean, it's like, I'm not in a school where we're training competitors. Most of the people, I would say, and someone was just saying, stop calling yourself a hobbyist. But most people, they're doing this for the fun. So it's a hobby. Yeah. It's something that they do. So it's like to come to class, I crack jokes a lot. I have a very dry sense of humor. Mm-hmm. And if you're insecure, you will misconstrue that as I'm finding fault with you. And there's a couple people in my life recently. Can you hold this thought for 1 second?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, literally, I'll be right back. Okay, I lied. It was 10 seconds.
Hey, that's okay. Opportunity to breathe. A deep breath in, a stillness at the top, a deep breath out, regulating the nervous system. We have always opportunity to practice.
That's right. And also, here's a cheap plug for my book.
Worth defending.
Anyway. Okay, so what I was going to say was, I have a friend of mine, and we both know this one woman, and she cannot stand me. And him and I are really good friends. And he says, Richard, I know who you are. But I did something, and he was talking to her, and he said, what did he do? She goes, I don't even remember. I just can't stand him. And he says, well, you've been walking around with this for like 10 years. Mm-hmm. And you don't even know why you don't like him. Mm-hmm. And my friend James was saying, he says, Richard, I know why, because you have this dryness about you. I mean, it's like I gave a person a few months ago a stripe on their belt. And one of the things that I said as they're walking away is I said, don't make me regret this. Now, obviously, I'm not serious. It was done out of humor.
Yeah.
It's kind of, and that's I say things to me that's so obvious that it's a joke, but not everybody takes it like that. If you have a little thing, like the same way that I had with my dad, when he said certain things to me, I went like when I wanted to leave the family business, and my dad said to me, what else do you think you're qualified for, Richard? And I went, oh, I interpreted that as like, you bastard. What are you saying? That I can't do anything? And he wasn't saying that at all. He just said, what are you qualified for? And really, I didn't know. I didn't have an answer because I hadn't trained in anything else.
And that's okay.
That's right. But I interpreted it as this. So it gave me one more reason not to like my dad.
Yeah.
And then, I did some work with Dr. Dossi when I told him that story. And he said, Richard, and we did some little techniques, and then he also explained, he said, maybe it was just a statement. Maybe it was just a question. What are you qualified for? And I went, wow. And that gave me one reason to hate my dad more. Mm-hmm. And so I'm glad that, and that's because I had a chip on my shoulder. So, like my friend James, he said, Richard, she doesn't know who you are. Mm-hmm. And I had a neighbor of mine who I really like. We were talking, and I said, I don't know what I said to him. And he says, you said, and I said, dude, what reason would I have to put you down? I said, I enjoyed talking to you. I like seeing you. And you said, I said something which you can't even recall. So, it's something, it's an edge that I have because I like to look at fun of the obvious, but not everybody takes it like that because it's a sarcasm, but it
And because
doesn't mean that I don't have love.
and it's because of things that they're holding on to on their shoulders that they're not bringing awareness to and letting that go. Those chips on their shoulders. It's not so much you, it's them.
I know, but one of the things that Dr. Dossi said to me, and it's the same thing that when Horian says there's no such thing as a bad student. One of the things that Dr. Dossi said to me is he said, the meaning of a communication is the response that you get, not the intent.
That's a good one.
So you can have great intentions, but if you get a bad response, who's responsible for that? If I say something and it pisses you off, but yet I didn't mean to piss you off, so you can say, hey, I can say, hey, man, what? I didn't mean it like that. And you go, well, that's the way, going, you know what? I'm sorry. This was me. Let me say it differently. Let me put it in terms, in other words, to really, if we take responsibility for the communication between us, if just that we do that doesn't mean that that if I say something and you have a bad response, but if we all adapted that kind of thing going, wow. And that's why when these guys have a problem with me, it's like, wait a minute, I meant nothing by this. If I didn't like you, you would know it because I wouldn't talk to you. So, absolutely. And I think that people need to have that kind of take responsibility for what you're seeing in front of you.
For the response rather than the intention.
That's right. That's a tough one.
And a big piece of this is something you alluded to earlier, is forgiveness. Forgiving yourself for what you didn't know or for your errors before, and in the now changing it. And just putting in the reps and creating a new normal.
Yeah. There you go.
So, you've mentioned a lot of different mentors and helpers along the way, Horian being one, Dr. Dossi being another, Hickson. So let's just take a moment to acknowledge some of these mentors. We can start with those three, Dr. Dossi, Horian, and Hickson. What were your major takeaways that you learned from them that you've incorporated into yourself as a being and as a teacher?
Gosh. I think probably the biggest thing, and it also, and Dr. Dossi and Horian had a very similar philosophy, because thinking that I wasn't a good student, I mean, I thought, you heard my book, I thought that I was stupid. But, one of the things that Dr. Dossi said is you were being taught by inflexible teachers. They knew how to teach the masses. So, and if you're not part of what those masses do, you fall through the cracks, and then you and I internalized it as saying, I'm stupid, I can't learn. That's why I had those situations with Horian, and which had him come to me saying, hey, there's no such thing as a bad student, which was very similar to what Dr. Dossi said. There's inflexible teachers. But also one big difference is that I was doing something with Horian that I wanted to do. I wanted to do jiu-jitsu. I was also taking private classes. There wasn't a group that I could fall through the cracks. And I'll even tell the students that if they feel like they're not getting attention and they have that kind of like, oh, I don't, because, there are people that kind of have that thing. And one of them is a student that started with me a few months ago. And she is, she kind of had a very similar attitude that I just about learning and being very self-conscious. And I said, you know what, you might want to read my book. And she did. And man, she just like, wow, I can really relate to this. And she started taking my class. And about once every 6 weeks or so, she'll do a private class with me. And I see how she's getting along, and we chatted quite a bit, you know, through Instagram about some of those thoughts that she was having. And that, to me, you know, when I could touch somebody like that and pass along what was, you know, passed to me, helps her quiet that little negative part of her. So those, and I mean, even though Horian told me this, and Dr. Dasi helped me to incorporate this, to make sure I have to say what we just talked about, the meaning of the communication. And I'll tell people, I say, look, if you hear me raise my voice and say, not like this, like, you know, if I get excited in class, I said, my frustration is not with you so much as it's with me. What can I do? How much more effective can I be as a communicator, as a teacher, to get you to do what I'm. And that's the thing. Even though it sounds like I'm kind of addressing them, I'll tell them, I'll say, I'm thinking, how can I be more effective? So between Horian and Dr. Dasi, it was that same kind of thing. Hickson was always made me realize, because his classes were so different. We would do we'd do about half an hour of technique. Every other, like, private classes with those guys back then was usually a half an hour, 20 minutes of technique, 10 minutes of a light roll. With Hickson, it was that, you know, and I think I was purple belt when I was training with Hickson. Well, the last time I was training with him. And he would do a 30-minute, we do a 45-minute class, 30 minutes of technique and 15 minutes of nonstop rolling. Okay. And after like a few minutes, I'd be like, and he goes, no, Richard, don't stop. This is where the jiu-jitsu kicks in. And it was just like, so it taught me that I needed to pace myself. Because when you're fatigued, that's all you have left is your technique. Yeah. So what do your private classes look like now, Richard? So you described what Horian and Hickson's private classes. What do private classes with you look like? You know, it's just, I just started teaching a 11-year-old boy, a guy that was in my class, his son. Yeah. He's an orthopedic surgeon, and he used to come over to Krav Maga. And after the pandemic, you know, we lost touch. And it just so happens that a guy who read my book, who lives about a couple miles away, this student of mine was his orthopedic surgeon. And so my friend went into Eric's office, and they were talking, you know, because he says, this friend of mine does jiu-jitsu. He's a white belt. So he says, oh yeah, you know, I did jiu-jitsu. And he told me, he says, oh yeah, there's this book that I've been reading, Worth Defending, by Richard Bresler. He goes, Richard Bresler was my teacher. So anyways, so my friend Tom says, hey, Eric wants to get in touch with you. So Eric and I are chatting. He says, look, would you come out and teach my son? So they live about 15 minutes away. I went over to their house, taught him a class. And a lot of it is just that very same thing: relax, technique. Every single class, I'm teaching. Most of my students, by the way, are white, blue, and a couple purple belts. I think I have 3 purple belts. And most of it is really foundational stuff. And I'm just helping them tighten it up and relaxing. Just go over the technique, because we're always getting newer students. So all I do, and I'll show the move, and then I have a couple guys that have started to take semi-private, and I rarely show them anything new. I just get them relaxed and do technique, relax, do technique, relax, do technique. I'm not showing him anything new. I'm just saying, look, this one guy, both these guys, but one of the guys they're both in their mid-50s. One guy is just 210 pounds. The guy's just like a tank.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, when you roll, though, you're just manhandling people. I said, do you find this fun? And he said, not really. And I said, would you like to? He said, yeah. So I said, okay. I said, you need to stop worrying about being caught and start going for some moves instead of holding someone smaller down, which is not a challenge.
Yeah.
And it's like I'm 140 pounds, but if I took an 80 pounder and just held him down, I can do it, but
no one's winning on that
deal.
Situation. Yeah.
Yeah. So, so I said, how about doing techniques, put yourself in a bad position, find a way to get out of it. I said, worst that'll happen is you'll get tapped. Okay. Mm-hmm. And then you go like, okay, do this a few times. And you go, oh yeah, I put my hand over here and I can just move like, I said, yeah. So most of my classes, like I used to kind of make fun when Horian would come in a lot of times, like his seminar. One of the things that Horian will still do to this day, he'll just show you the cross collar choke.
Yeah.
I went into his office, I don't know, about 5 years ago, and he grabbed a gi from his closet. He said, Richard, show me the cross collar choke. We're just talking. So I did the cross collar choke, and he taught me, right? Yeah. So as I did, and I have a good choke, and he goes, almost perfect. And then, so I said, okay. So I did it again, and then he took my second hand and just put it up just a little further.
A little deeper,
like, yeah. That's right. So that's what I'm doing. Most of the stuff, I'll show moves. A lot of times they're, instead of showing, what's the analogy Bruce Lee did? Like, would you rather be good at one kick and do it 1,000 times, or 1,000 moves and do them once?
Mm-hmm, yeah, it's the one thing.
I want to make sure that these guys own the move. Mm-hmm. So I show them less, but show little details along the way. And that's what I'm doing. That's what my classes are like.
No, that's beautiful. I really appreciate that. I just have a couple of last questions for you, Richard. One I'm really curious to hear your take on, especially considering your history with drug use and with quaaludes, cocaine, pot, and Valium. You said 3 of those are they're synthetic and not good, but the pot, the cannabis, there's different opinions on that, and it's actually quite used in the jiu-jitsu world, cannabis. And so I wanted just to ask your take on that, on cannabis. And it's becoming legal, and it's legal all across Canada where I'm from. It's legal in California where you're from. It doesn't mean that it's right, and doesn't mean that it can't be abused. But yeah, just your take on cannabis.
Can you hang on one more second? I want to grab my bong. I have a student that grows and manufactures CBD and THC tinctures, and also he has, little bags of flour, THC and CBD. And one of the things that he gave me some like straight THC, 1-to-1, 4-to-1, different stuff. And I use a little bit. I don't use it the way I used to use it. I don't use it to get high.
Numb.
Because I tried, when I first got introduced to tinctures and edibles, I overdid it. I didn't know how much to use. So man, and I was so uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. So 2 or 3 nights a week, I'll take a little bit. It's more of I was kind of curious to see what I can't think of the word that I'm looking for. Just the use, just to see if it would help me at some level, because there's so much that was said, and I don't know if it's true or not true, but people are saying, oh, it's good as an anti-inflammatory, it's good for digestion. So I tried, I did it for that. I didn't notice too much from that. Like I said, what I do is I mean, an edible where you would really get high, I think that minimum is probably about 5 milligrams of THC.
Yeah.
I probably ingest a milligram. So it's a microdose.
Yes.
So it's just a little bit, and it's usually a blend of CBD or CBN, for sleeping at night.
Yeah.
But I used to wake up to a bong, for years. And I don't really want to smoke because of, when I used to do a bong or smoke a joint, we'd sit there and, and it's, no matter what, it's not good for your lungs to do something like that on a regular basis. It's people look, if you like THC and you like to do it, whatever, who's ever out there listening, great. I'm just saying, think about that, find a different way to ingest it. And I don't like being you're out of control. When I took Quaaludes, I was, especially if you overdo it, you're completely out of control. I like to be aware of my faculties. I don't want to be completely. So, that's why I don't drink. I don't drink because I don't like the taste of alcohol, but even with THC, I don't want to get really completely wiped out. And like I said, the smoking part is something that I've been around people who smoke on a regular basis, and they have this nasty cough.
It's not good for the lungs.
Yeah. So I don't know if that was the answer you were looking for, but I don't indulge anymore. And I've had friends that go, Richard, if I could get you a Quaalude right now, would you take it? Because I really did love Quaaludes. And I said, honestly, because of the one, I might want to do another one. But two, it's the effect that it has on the liver. This is synthetic, and it's a nasty drug. So I probably wouldn't do it. Because I have a student that is a chemist. He said, you get me the stuff. He says, I can make them for you. I said, not interested. Been there, done that.
Been there, done that. Not interested. No, that's fair. Well, thank you so much, Richard. You've shared so much wisdom in this conversation that goes so beyond jiu-jitsu. And I think that is really important to see how we learn concepts in jiu-jitsu and we can apply them to all aspects of our life. My final question for you, Richard, is all for the highs and lows that is this life experience, that is this hero's journey of yours. What has been the greatest life lesson that you've learned on your path that you feel called in this moment to share with the listeners?
It's probably what I said earlier about when you want to make a change and you are at that point where you're making the change, be gentle on yourself. I used to think that if you did something, like if I was doing that, if I said, okay, Richard, it's okay, I forgive you, I'd say, well, that's just going to create the behavior, and it's going to make because I didn't make a big thing of it, and it's going to make me want to, it's like it's okay to do that. And it wasn't that. It was just to say, look, so you caught yourself. Why beat yourself over it? Because if you're beating yourself up, it's kind of like what you resist persists. If you're constantly harping on something, you're putting that to your center of attention. Oh, I screwed up. God, what an idiot. Oh my God, I screwed up. Oh, what an idiot. It's like, hey, okay, what do you want? When Dr. Dossi, after I bitched one time in a session, talking to Dr. Dossi, and I'm telling him all these things I didn't want. Well, I don't want my to do this, and I don't want this to happen. And he said, great, I got it. What do you want, Richard? And I said, well, I don't want this, and I don't want this. And he said, Richard, good. I said, so what do you want? And I'm thinking to myself, why do you keep asking me the same question? I just told you. And he said, well, not exactly. I said, I asked you what you wanted and you proceeded to tell me what you didn't want. So he said, what do you want? And I went, I don't know. And he goes, when you find that answer, then you're ready. So keep asking yourself, what do you want? Doesn't matter if you don't. It doesn't matter if you can't get it right now. At least you have something to drive toward.
So right here, right now, what is it that you want, Richard?
I want you to stop asking me these hard questions. You know, I want people to know and this is something that's just happened to, I want people to know the roots of jiu-jitsu in this country, especially because it's, how many people do jiu-jitsu in North America or the world? Over 1 million easily, right?
More and more each day.
Right. So how many people know where it started, how it started?
One place they could find out is your book, Worth Defending, now available on Amazon, Audible, and I listened to the Audible with Scott Bird. It's fantastic. The reviews are excellent. Check it out. They can find the links to all those on richardbresler.com, and they can connect you with on Instagram at Richard_Bresler. Anywhere else they could find you?
My website, which probably has the links to Facebook, Instagram. Yeah. And yeah, but that's good.
And if they want to train with you, where can they come train?
I teach up at 360 self-defense. It's over by LAX. So they could fly in, come to the place, and then fly home. You know, it's about a half a mile from LAX. It's a nice little studio. I've been there for, you know, probably about 3 years now, because I was at Krav Maga up until the pandemic, and then I never went back there. And you know, and now I teach there. I teach at another place called Sparta Academy, that's owned by both of the guys that own these other studios. They have Krav Maga experience, and the guy at Sparta is a black belt in Krav Maga. He's a black belt in Jiu-Jitsu, and the other guy where I teach at 360, Ricky, is he's a brown belt in Krav Maga. Left there just before he was going to be tested. But he's a great guy, and he's an excellent stand-up fighter, and I mean, he's going to jiu-jitsu very fast. He's a blue belt now, and well, I don't want to tell him. I don't want him to hear this to know that he's closer to the purple, you know. Than, but yeah, that's where I'm right. So,
well, thank you so much, Richard. I look forward to continuing listening and learning from you. I hopefully with your second book on the mindset and how to create change. So keeping fingers crossed to have that one. I can have you on for another conversation about that book and speaks more about Krav Maga. We close all our conversations with a fist bump, stepping into the winner's circle. Boom.
Boom.
Thank you so much. And it's been a pleasure. It's a wrap on today's call, Richard.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.